Chase Donovan from HR called at 4:47 p.m. on a Friday, the coward's hour, to say my pension was temporarily suspended as part of a workforce optimization initiative. No thanks for my 28 years building Vanguard from a Detroit garage into a tech giant. Just sterile corporate jargon in an email titled, Important Benefits Update. Action not required. They'd erased my retirement like it was a typo. I sat in silence as rain lashed my window, realizing they'd already written me off. But they'd forgotten one thing. I walked to my closet, pulled down a dusty burgundy folder labeled Faith Douglas, Founding Documents. Do not discard, and found it. My 1997 Founding Member Agreement. On page 7, Section 9C read clearly. In the event of any material adverse modification to founding members' agreed compensation structure, said founding member shall be entitled to immediate severance payment of $35 million. My lawyer Helena had called it a kill switch back when $35 million sounded like fantasy. Now it was real, and Chase's email had just triggered it. I scanned the contract, emailed my attorney Gregory Winters with the subject, Urgent, Founding Agreement Enforcement, and smiled for the first time in months. They thought I was disposable. Let's see how disposable $35 million feels when it vanishes from their books in 5 days. That night I slept deeply, knowing justice was already en route, and I held the receipt. Gregory called at 7:18 a.m. the next morning. Lawyers don't call at dawn unless it's devastatingly right. Faith, Gregory said, voice tight with excitement. I've reviewed the document. It's airtight. Completely enforceable. You never signed the 2011 restructure. You explicitly declined it, and they acknowledged it. There's a paper trail. I didn't. No. Their pension freeze triggered Section 9C. They owe you $35 million, payable within 5 business days. He paused. Do you want to send the notification? I thought of Chase's cold email, the years I'd spent invisible while keeping their systems alive. Yes, I said. Draft it. Professional. No emotion. Just the facts. An hour later his email arrived. 2. Legal Department, Vanguard Solutions Inc. Chase Donovan from Faith Douglas RE. Enforcement of Founding Member Agreement Section 9C. This serves as formal notification under Section 9C of my Founding Member Agreement, March 14, 1997. Your November 17 HR communication, suspending legacy pension commitments, constitutes a material adverse modification. I hereby invoke my right to immediate severance of $35 million, payable within 5 business days. Confirm receipt and provide wire instructions by end of day. Regards, Faith Douglas. I read it once. Sent it. 6 hours of silence. Then a call from Vanguard's external counsel, urgent, strained. I let it go to voicemail. Another call from Chase himself, suddenly friendly. Let's talk this through. I saved it as evidence. At 6 p.m. still no written reply. I sent a follow-up. Follow-up, Section 9C enforcement, no acknowledgement received. Payment window began at 8:03 a.m. deadline. Friday, November 24, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Confirm wire arrangements. 20 minutes later Randall Price fired back. Serious questions about validity. Suspension is temporary. No permanent modification. Cease communications. I forwarded it to Gregory with 3 words. Your thoughts. He called instantly. They're bluffing. The clause doesn't require permanence. Any adverse modification triggers it. And you never signed those later agreements. They're buying time. So what do we do? Respond. No negotiation. Just facts. I hung up, watching the city lights blink on. Somewhere in a glass tower, they were realizing the old woman they'd tried to erase had just lit the fuse. They'd assumed I was powerless because I was quiet. They mistook patience for weakness, competence for compliance. That was their first mistake. And if they kept pushing, it wouldn't be their last. Gregory's response went out at 8:47 p.m. Precise and devastating. 2. Randall Price, ESQ.cc. Vanguard Solutions Legal Department from Gregory Winters SQ, Counsel for Faith Douglas, RE. Section 9C Enforcement Clarifications. Mr. Price, your claims about the founding member agreement's validity are incorrect and unsupported. In 2011, Ms. Douglas explicitly declined the compensation restructure, email attached, acknowledged by your client. In 2016, she was never offered participation and signed nothing. The temporary pension suspension is irrelevant. Section 9C triggers on any material adverse modification, permanent or not. Their own HR email confirms the suspension is active. The clause is unambiguous. The modification occurred. The $35 million severance is due. Day 1 of the 5-day window has passed. For Remain, failure to pay will result in immediate legal action, including injunctive relief, interest, and public filing. We await wire confirmation. Gregory Winters Isq. I slept soundly that night. The kind of rest that comes from knowing your lawyer just dropped a legal anvil on someone who deserved it. Tuesday morning, my personal phone rang. Caller ID, Lydia Prescott. CFO. Survivor of every corporate purge. We'd saved Vanguard together during the 2008 crash. He got promotions. I got a coffee mug. Faith, she said, voice measured. Can we talk? We are. In person. Like old times. Cornerstone Cafe. Noon. I arrived early. She showed up at 12:02 in a suit worth more than my rent. You look well, she offered. You look expensive. She cut to the chase. This founding agreement thing, it's causing complications. Is that what we're calling breach of contract now? She argued the freeze was across the board, just fiscal reality. I corrected her. You violated my agreement. That triggered a consequence. Cause and effect. Then came the guilt play. 35 million will force layoffs. Real people will suffer. I leaned in. Don't make me responsible for your choices. You froze my pension. You signed off. The fallout is yours. She offered a settlement. 15 million over time. Everyone wins. Everyone except the principle that contracts matter, I said. The answer is no. I stood. You have 3 days left. Her voice softened. Faith, please. I paused. If you'd just called me, if you'd treated me like a person, not a line item, I might have worked with you. But you sent a form email on a Friday like I was expired code. I walked out, leaving her with her cappuccino and the dawning truth. Some bridges can't be rebuilt with charm. That evening, Vanguard's stock dropped 4%. No news had broken, just the market sensing blood in the water. I ate pad thai and watched the red line fall. Gregory texted, "They're panicking." Good. Then an email from an unknown address. Miss Douglas, I'm a senior dev here. Your systems still run half our stack. Your docs saved me countless times. They treated you like trash. Burn it down if you have to. Some of us are cheering. A grateful dev. I read it 3 times. For the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. I saved it in a folder titled, Evidence of Impact. Outside, Detroit glittered, unaware that a billion-dollar company was crumbling under the weight of its own arrogance. 3 days left. 72 hours until either Vanguard paid what they owed or I went to war in a way that would make the stock dip look like a gentle breeze before the hurricane. I finished my pad thai, closed my laptop, and allowed myself something I hadn't felt in years. Anticipation sharp and bright as a blade in sunlight. Wednesday morning brought an unexpected escalation. At 8:15 a.m. as I was making breakfast, my phone exploded with notifications. Texts, emails, missed calls, all within the span of 90 seconds. I opened my news app first. The headline hit me like cold water. Tech giant Vanguard Solutions faces founder payout crisis, stock tumbles. The article, published at 7:47 a.m. by a financial reporter named Kevin Lang, was devastating in its simplicity. Sources close to Vanguard Solutions Incorporated confirm the company is facing a potential $35 million payout to founding member Faith Douglas, triggered by recent changes to compensation packages. The payment, required within 5 business days of notification, stems from a decades-old founding agreement that was apparently never superseded despite multiple corporate restructurings. Douglas, who has been with the company since its 1997 inception, declined to comment. Vanguard Solutions Communications Department did not respond to requests for statement. The revelation comes as Vanguard already faces pressure from activist investors to cut costs and improve margins. A $35 million unplanned expenditure would represent approximately 3% of the company's current cash reserves and could trigger credit facility covenant reviews. Vanguard stock dropped 7% in pre-market trading on the news. I set down my phone carefully as if it might explode. Someone had leaked this. Someone inside Vanguard, someone with access to legal communications and the willingness to burn the company's reputation to, what? Hurt them? Help me. Create chaos? My phone rang. Gregory Winters, his voice tight with controlled excitement. Have you seen the news? Just read it. Who leaked? No idea, but it's perfectly timed. Now Vanguard can't pretend this is a private contract dispute. It's public. Their investors know. Their competitors know. Every analyst on Wall Street is watching. Is this good or bad for us? It's phenomenal for us. They can't stall anymore, can't play games. If they default on this payment now in public view, their credibility implodes. Board members get ousted. Credit ratings drop. It becomes existential. I could hear him shuffling papers. We need to prepare for them to either pay immediately or go to war. No middle ground now. After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table watching the sun rise over Detroit's skyline, thinking about that anonymous developer's email from yesterday. Burn it down if you need to. Maybe I hadn't lit the match. But someone had, and they'd done it in a way that made retreat impossible for either side. By noon the story had spread. TechCrunch picked it up. So did Bloomberg, the Wall Street Journal, and a dozen financial blogs. My name was suddenly attached to phrases like contractual time bomb and founder's revenge. My phone kept ringing. Reporters mostly asking for interviews. I declined them all with the same two-sentence response. I have nothing to add beyond what's in the legal record. This is a straightforward contract enforcement matter. But the internet, as the internet does, had other ideas. By Wednesday afternoon I was trending on Twitter. Hashtag Faith Douglas and hashtag Vanguard payout were climbing the charts, mixing with hot takes ranging from, this is corporate justice, to she's trying to destroy a company. One tweet from a tech industry blogger with a substantial following captured something I hadn't fully articulated even to myself. Faith Douglas spent 28 years making rich men richer. They thanked her by trying to steal her retirement. Now she's collecting what they promised. This isn't revenge. It's accounting. That one got retweeted 40,000 times. Another notification, this one an email from Chase Donovan. The subject line, personal request. I almost deleted it unread, but curiosity won. Faith, I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from right now. But I need you to understand something. The pension freeze wasn't my idea. It came from the board, from pressure by activist investors who wanted immediate cost cuts. I was just the messenger. I've been with Vanguard for 6 years. I've never met you face to face, but I've heard the stories. I know what you built. I know what you mean to this company's history. I'm not asking you to withdraw your claim. I understand why you're doing this. But I am asking if there's any way we can resolve this that doesn't result in massive layoffs. Because that's what's coming. The board met this morning. If they have to pay the $35 million, they're planning to offset it by cutting 200 positions. Real people, Faith. People with families. People who had nothing to do with the decision to freeze your pension. I know that's not fair to put on you. But I thought you should know what's at stake. Chase Donovan. I read the email 3 times, feeling my jaw tighten with each pass. Then I wrote back, fingers hitting the keys harder than necessary. Chase, let me make something very clear. I don't work for Vanguard anymore. I don't owe this company my silence, my cooperation, or my concern for decisions the board makes. You say the pension freeze wasn't your idea. Fine. But you delivered it. You put your name on that email. You didn't push back, didn't question, didn't even have the courage to call me directly. Now you want me to feel guilty because the board is threatening layoffs? That's hostage negotiation, not business strategy. They're betting I'll back down to save jobs, which means they can keep violating contracts as long as they threaten enough innocent people. Here's what you should tell the board. Honor your agreements. Pay what you owe. If you need to cut costs after that, cut executive bonuses. Cut stock buybacks. Cut the private jet budget. Cut any of the 100 places where money flows to people who already have too much. Don't cut the workers and then blame me for enforcing a contract you violated. You want to save those 200 jobs? Here's how. Pay me what's contractually owed by Friday, Then manage your company responsibly instead of using employees as human shields. Faith Douglas. I hit send, then closed my laptop harder than necessary. The audacity of it. The sheer corporate audacity of breaking a contract, triggering massive consequences, and then trying to make me responsible for their choices. As if I had forced them to freeze my pension. As if I had created this crisis instead of simply responding to it. I walked to my window, pressed my forehead against the cold glass, and watched the city move below me. Cars navigating intersections, people hurrying along sidewalks with their heads down against the wind. Everyone had their own crisis, their own struggle. Mine just happened to be playing out in financial headlines and Twitter threads. My phone buzzed again. Another email, this time from an address that made my breath catch. board.chair@vanguardsolutions.com. Leonard Ashford. The man who'd signed my original founding agreement 28 years ago. The venture capitalist who'd believed in 5 exhausted people with a crazy idea and just enough code to prove it might work. I hadn't heard from Leonard in over a decade. Faith. It's been too long. I saw the news this morning and immediately pulled the old files. You're right, of course. The clause is valid. More than valid, it's necessary. I put it there precisely for this scenario. I'm no longer involved in Vanguard's day-to-day operations, haven't been for years. But I still sit on the board, and I've just spent 4 hours in emergency session listening to people who weren't born when we founded this company try to figure out how to avoid paying you what we promised. It's disgusting, Faith. The short-term thinking, the quarterly earnings obsession, the complete disregard for the people who built the foundation. This isn't the company we created. I'm voting to pay you. Immediately. Full amount. And I'm bringing 3 other board members with me. We have the votes to make this happen by Friday. But I wanted you to hear it from me first because you deserve at least that much. An acknowledgement. An apology that this ever became necessary. We built something remarkable, Faith. I'm sorry they forgot that. Leonard. I read the email twice, then sat down slowly on my couch, feeling something shift inside my chest. Not victory, not yet. But vindication, the kind that cuts through anger and leaves behind something cleaner. Leonard remembered. After all these years, after all the restructurings and new management and strategic pivots, at least one person remembered what we'd built and why it mattered. I wrote back, keeping it brief. Leonard, thank you. Not just for the vote, but for remembering. Whatever happens next, it's good to know the foundation still means something to someone. Faith. Thursday arrived like the calm before a detonation. Vanguard stock was down another 3%, trading at volumes that suggested institutional investors were quietly exiting positions. The financial blogs were having a field day, half of them painting me as a corporate raider, the other half as a working-class hero. Neither narrative was quite right, but accuracy rarely matters in these situations. At 10:47 a.m. my phone rang. Gregory Winters, his voice tight with barely restrained excitement. They're moving the money. What? I just got notification from their Treasury Department. They're initiating the wire transfer. $35 million, scheduled to clear your account by tomorrow afternoon. I sat down, suddenly dizzy. They're actually paying. Leonard Ashford apparently went nuclear in the board meeting. Threatened to resign and take 3 other board members with him if they tried to stall. The vote was 7-2 in favor of immediate payment. Who voted against? The CEO and one of the newer directors. Everyone else folded once they realized Leonard was serious. Nobody wants to be the executive team that torpedoed their own company over a valid contract. I closed my eyes, letting the information settle. 28 years. 28 years of being invisible, essential, taken for granted. And now, in less than 5 days, I'd enforced a contract that would change everything. Faith? You still there? Yeah. I'm here. I'm just processing. Listen, the wire should hit your account tomorrow by 2 p.m. I'd recommend we set up a meeting next week to discuss asset management. This kind of money requires strategy, tax planning. Gregory, I interrupted gently. Let me get through the next 24 hours first. He laughed. Fair enough. Call me when it clears. After we hung up, I sat in my apartment listening to the radiator clank and hiss as it always did, watching dust particles drift through the afternoon light. Nothing had changed in my physical environment. Same furniture, same books on the shelves, same photographs on the walls. But everything had changed in ways I was only beginning to understand. Thursday afternoon brought an unexpected visitor. I was making tea when my apartment buzzer rang, the harsh electronic sound making me jump. Yes. Faith Douglas? I'm Natalie Wu from Channel 7 News. I was hoping I could ask you a few questions about. I hit the disconnect button. The buzzer rang again 30 seconds later. Then again. On the fourth ring, I unplugged the intercom unit from the wall and went back to my tea. Journalists had been calling all week, but showing up at my apartment crossed a line. I texted Gregory, reporters at my door. Is this normal? His response was immediate. Unfortunately, yes. Major story: charismatic David versus Goliath angle. Don't answer. Don't comment. Let them get bored. I spent the rest of Thursday afternoon reading a novel I'd been meaning to finish for 6 months, deliberately not checking my phone, not watching the news, not engaging with any of the chaos swirling around my name. At 7:23 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. Miss Douglas, this is Kevin Lang, the reporter who broke the Vanguard story. I'm not looking for a quote. I just wanted you to know, I got the tip from a mid-level manager who said you were the best boss he never had. Said you trained him 15 years ago and he's been using your documentation ever since. Thought you should know you have fans in there. KL. I stared at the message for a long moment, feeling that unfamiliar warmth again. Someone remembered. Multiple someones, apparently. The work hadn't been invisible after all. Just invisible to the people in charge. I texted back, thank you for letting me know. That night, I slept fitfully, dreams filled with numbers scrolling across screens, boardrooms that stretched into infinity, and the sound of wire transfers pinging like sonar in deep water. Friday morning dawned cold and clear, November sun cutting through my apartment windows with crystalline precision. I woke at 5:47 a.m., couldn't fall back asleep and finally gave up at 6:15. Made coffee. Watched the sunrise paint Detroit's skyline in shades of amber and rose. Tried not to check my banking app every 5 minutes. At 9:33 a.m. Gregory called. The wire's been sent. Treasury confirmed it left Vanguard's account at 8:45 this morning. Should post to your account within the next few hours. Okay. That's it? Just okay. What do you want me to say, Gregory? I'm processing. This is a lot. It's justice, Faith. That's what it is. 28 years later, but still justice. After we hung up, I tried to work on some freelance coding projects I'd picked up to fill the days. But concentration was impossible. I kept thinking about that garage in 1997, about the 5 of us surrounded by secondhand equipment and borrowed folding chairs, believing we could build something that mattered. We'd built Vanguard Solutions from nothing, from code and conviction and sheer stubborn refusal to quit. And then slowly we'd been pushed aside. The original team scattered, bought out, or quietly eased into positions where they couldn't affect anything important. But I'd stayed. I'd stayed because I believed in the work, in the foundation, in the idea that building something well mattered more than building it fast. And now, finally, that foundation was paying me back. At 1:47 p.m., my phone pinged with a notification from my banking app. Incoming wire transfer. $35 million. I stared at the screen. Refreshed it. The number didn't change. $35 million sitting in my checking account like it belonged there, like it was the most natural thing in the world. I called Gregory. It's here. Congratulations, Faith. You did it. We did it, I corrected. You made it happen. I just filed the paperwork. You had the courage to enforce your own contract. That's rare. Most people would have backed down. We talked about next steps, about moving the money into proper investment accounts, about tax implications and wealth management and all the practical concerns that come with sudden financial transformation. But when we hung up, I didn't feel transformed. I felt exactly the same as I had this morning, just with a number in my account that didn't quite feel real yet. I made lunch. Ate it at my kitchen table. Washed the dishes. Resumed the routine of existence as if nothing had changed. At 3:42 p.m., my phone buzzed with an email from Vanguard Solutions Communications Department. TO, all Vanguard Solutions employees from Communications Team Subject. Important company update. Dear valued team members, today Vanguard Solutions completed a significant financial transaction related to a founding member agreement from 1997. This payment represents the honorable fulfillment of our contractual obligations to Faith Douglas, one of our company's original builders. While this payout has necessitated some budget adjustments, we want to assure all employees that current operations remain stable. There will be no impact to ongoing projects or compensation structures. We remain committed to our mission and to the incredible team that makes Vanguard Solutions a leader in enterprise software. Thank you for your continued dedication. The leadership team. I read it 3 times looking for the lie, the hidden threat, the corporate speak that usually masked layoffs or restructuring. But it seemed straightforward. They'd paid. They were acknowledging it. They were moving on. No mention of the 200 layoffs Chase had threatened. No restructuring announcement. No executive shakeup. 20 minutes later, another email, this one from Chase Donovan's personal address. Faith. The board voted to cover your payout through executive compensation cuts and delayed stock buybacks. No employee layoffs. I wanted you to know that. I also wanted to apologize. Really apologize, not the corporate kind. You were right. I should have called you. Should have fought harder against the pension freeze. Should have remembered that people built this company before I ever walked through the door. I know an apology doesn't mean much at this point. But for what it's worth, I'm sorry. I closed my laptop without responding. Some apologies come too late to matter, no matter how sincere. But at least he'd tried. At least someone in that building had learned something from this whole mess. The weekend passed in surreal normalcy. I bought groceries. Cleaned my apartment. Took a long walk along the Detroit River, watching cargo ships navigate the channel while seagulls screamed overhead. My phone kept buzzing with messages. Reporters still hunting for interviews, financial advisors offering their services, distant relatives I hadn't heard from in decades suddenly very interested in my well-being. I ignored most of them, responded politely to a few, and blocked the obvious grifters. On Saturday evening, I received an email that made me pause. The sender, anonymous.devteam@protonmail.com. The subject line, "Thank you from the trenches. Ms. Douglas. We're a group of engineers, developers, and IT staff at Vanguard. About 40 of us, spanning from people who've been here 2 years to people who've been here 20. We wanted to reach out, anonymously because corporate retaliation is real, to tell you something important. What you did mattered. Not just for you but for all of us. 4 years, we've watched management treat this company like a quarterly earnings game. They optimize headcount, cut training budgets, freeze wages, and then wonder why morale tanks and good people leave. They forgot that Vanguard was built by people who cared about the work, not just the stock price. You reminded them. You proved that contracts mean something, that you can't just erase the people who built your foundation and expect no consequences. 3 things happened this week because of you. The board canceled the planned pension freeze expansion. They were going to roll it out to all employees next quarter. Now they're terrified to touch anyone's retirement benefits. Executive bonuses got cut by 40% to help cover your payout. The CEO is furious. We're delighted. HR is suddenly very, very interested in reviewing all founding member agreements, contractor protections, and legacy compensation structures. They're realizing that cutting costs has legal consequences they'd ignored for decades. So thank you. You didn't just get your own justice. You made this company remember that employees aren't disposable assets. That the people who build things matter even if they're quiet about it. Some of us are maintaining your original documentation systems. Some of us are still using code you wrote in 2003. All of us owe you more than we can say. The team that remembers. I read the email 4 times, feeling my eyes blur on the last pass. This was what I'd needed to hear. Not that I'd won, not that I'd collected money, but that the action had meant something beyond my own situation. That maybe, just maybe, it had changed something fundamental about how that company treated its people. I saved the email in a folder I titled, "Why It Mattered," and allowed myself for the first time since this whole thing started, to feel something like satisfaction. Monday morning brought clarity in the form of financial logistics. Gregory and I spent 3 hours on calls with wealth management advisors, tax attorneys, and investment strategists. The $35 million was real, but it came with complexities I'd never imagined. Tax implications alone would take months to navigate properly. By Monday afternoon, the money had been moved from my checking account into a diversified portfolio of investments, trusts, and carefully structured accounts designed to generate sustainable income while preserving capital. I signed so many documents my hand cramped. When it was done, Gregory leaned back in his chair during our video call and grinned. How does it feel to be independently wealthy? Surreal, I admitted. I keep expecting someone to tell me there was a mistake, that the wire got reversed. No mistake. The money's yours. Legally, permanently yours. What are you going to do with it? I'd been thinking about that question all weekend. Honestly, I'm not sure yet. Part of me wants to just keep living my life. Same apartment, same routine. Maybe travel a little. You could retire. Never work again. I'm 53, Gregory. I'm too young to retire and too old to pretend I'm starting over. I'll figure it out. After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea, watching the afternoon light shift across the walls. The money changed everything and nothing simultaneously. I was still me. Still the person who'd spent 28 years building systems and solving problems and being invisible. But now I had choices. The freedom to walk away from things that didn't serve me, to invest in things that mattered. That evening I drafted an email I'd been composing in my head for days. To anonymous.devteam@protonmail.com from Faith Douglas. Subject: thank you from the trenches. To the team that remembers. Your email meant more to me than you know. For years I wondered if the work mattered beyond the immediate fixes and systems builds. Knowing that people still use those tools, still reference that documentation, makes every late night and stressful crisis worthwhile. I want you to know something. What I did wasn't heroic. It was just contract enforcement. But the reason I did it, the reason I didn't back down, was because I was tired of watching companies treat their people like expendable resources. You deserve better. You all do. Better compensation, better recognition, better leadership that remembers why the company exists in the first place. If this situation changed anything at Vanguard, if it made management think twice before cutting corners on people's futures, then maybe it was worth the stress and publicity. Keep building good things. Keep documenting your work. Keep being the foundation that holds everything up, even when nobody notices. And if they ever try to screw you over, remember, contracts exist for a reason. Use them. Faith Douglas. I hit send, then closed my laptop. The weeks that followed were strange and quiet. The news cycle moved on to other scandals, other corporate dramas. Vanguard's stock recovered slowly, climbing back to pre-crisis levels as investors realized the company wasn't actually imploding. I received 3 job offers from competing companies, all of them offering ridiculous salaries and titles like Chief Legacy Officer or Strategic Foundation Architect. I declined them all politely. Whatever I did next, it wouldn't be for another corporation that viewed people as optimizable assets. Instead, I started small. Took a freelance consulting contract helping a Detroit-based startup build their infrastructure. Worked part-time, set my own hours, charged what I was actually worth. It felt revolutionary to be valued, to have clients who listened when I spoke and implemented my recommendations without 6 layers of approval. I also started teaching. Free workshops at the public library, showing people basic coding skills and systems administration. The classes filled up immediately, laid-off workers trying to transition into tech, young people who couldn't afford formal education, career changers looking for new paths. Teaching felt right in ways corporate work never had. I was building foundation again, but this time for people who actually appreciated it, who said thank you and showed up eager to learn. One evening in early December, about 3 weeks after the wire cleared, I received a package at my apartment. No return address, just my name printed in neat block letters. Inside, a leather-bound journal and a handwritten note on heavy cardstock. Faith, thank you for reminding me why we started Vanguard in the first place. It wasn't for stock prices or quarterly earnings. It was because we believed we could build something that mattered. I'm stepping down from the board at year-end. It's time for new leadership that remembers that employees are people, not optimization targets. This journal belonged to my father. He was a union organizer in the 1960s, fought his whole life for workers' rights. He taught me that contracts exist to protect people from the powerful, and that sometimes the most important thing you can do is stand your ground. You stood your ground, Faith. He would have been proud. Leonard Ashford. I held the journal carefully, feeling the weight of history and intention in its worn leather cover. Inside, the first page contained a quote in faded ink. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good people to do nothing. Edmund Burke. I smiled, touched by the gesture and the recognition it represented. Then I opened to the first blank page and wrote a single line. Some foundations are built to last. Others are built to hold people up when everything else collapses. Know the difference. Christmas came and went quietly. I spent it with a few close friends, people who'd been in my life long before Vanguard and would remain after. We ate too much food, exchanged modest gifts, and didn't talk about the money or the headlines or any of it. On New Year's Eve, alone in my apartment with a glass of wine and the city lights sparkling below, I allowed myself to reflect on the year that was ending. I'd started 2025 as an invisible employee, taken for granted and undervalued. I was ending it as someone who'd enforced a contract that changed a company's entire approach to its people. The money was nice, sure. Life-changing even. But the real victory was simpler than that. They tried to erase me. To pension freeze me into irrelevance. To treat me like a cost to be optimized away. And I'd proven definitively and publicly that some people can't be erased. That foundations matter. That contracts are binding. That quiet competence, given enough time and the right circumstances, can be more powerful than any amount of corporate posturing. At midnight, as fireworks exploded over the Detroit River and my neighbors cheered from their windows, I raised my glass to the reflection in my window. To foundations, I said quietly. And to the people who remember why they were built. January brought an unexpected development. I received a formal invitation, printed on heavy cream cardstock with embossed letters. The National Association of Women in Technology cordially invites Faith Douglas to speak at our annual conference, Breaking Glass, Building Foundations, March 15, 2026, Chicago, Illinois. I almost declined automatically. Public speaking had never been my strength, and the idea of standing on a stage in front of hundreds of people made my stomach clench. But then I thought about that anonymous email from the dev team. About the dozens of young people showing up to my free coding workshops. About all the invisible workers out there who believed their only options were to stay quiet or leave. Maybe they needed to hear that there was a third option. Stand your ground. Know your worth. Enforce your contracts. I called the conference organizer, a woman named Angela Bennett, who spoke with infectious enthusiasm about empowering women in tech and celebrating those who'd built the industry's foundation. "We'd love to have you," Angela said. "Your story resonated with so many people. Not just the money part, but the way you handled it. The dignity. The patience. The absolute refusal to back down." "I'm not much of a public speaker," I warned. "You don't need to be. Just tell your story. Tell people what you learned. That's all anyone wants to hear." I agreed to do it, then immediately second-guessed the decision for the next 6 weeks. The conference happened on a cold March morning in Chicago, snow swirling outside the convention center windows, while inside, hundreds of women in technology gathered to network, learn, and celebrate. I stood backstage wearing a suit I'd bought specifically for this occasion, trying to remember the breathing exercises my friend had taught me to manage stage fright. Angela found me 5 minutes before I was scheduled to go on. "You ready?" "Absolutely not." She laughed. "Good. The best talks always come from people who are slightly terrified. Just remember, they're not here to judge you. They're here because your story gave them hope." The introduction was generous, highlighting my 28 years at Vanguard, the founding member agreement, the $35 million payout, and the aftermath. When I walked out onto the stage, the applause was thunderous, hundreds of women on their feet clapping. I reached the microphone, looked out at the sea of faces, and felt my prepared remarks evaporate from my mind. So I did what I do best. I told the truth. "I'm not a hero," I started. "I'm just someone who read her contract carefully and enforced it when the other party violated the terms. That shouldn't be revolutionary. But apparently in corporate America it is." Laughter rippled through the audience. For 28 years I was invisible. I built systems, fixed crises, trained new employees, and kept the infrastructure running. Nobody noticed because infrastructure isn't supposed to be noticed. It's supposed to just work. Heads nodded throughout the room. When they froze my pension, they probably thought I'd accept it quietly. That I'd complain to friends, maybe talk to a lawyer, but ultimately do nothing. Because that's what quiet, competent women do, right? We accept. We adapt. We don't make waves. I paused, letting the moment settle. But here's what they forgot. Quiet doesn't mean powerless. Competent doesn't mean compliant. And if you've spent decades building the foundation someone else stands on, you know exactly where the weak points are. The applause started then, building into something that felt less like appreciation and more like recognition. like hundreds of invisible women suddenly seeing themselves reflected back. I talked for 30 minutes about contracts, about documentation, about the importance of reading what you sign and keeping records of everything. About knowing your worth and refusing to accept less than what was promised. When I finished, the standing ovation lasted so long I had to wave them down just to leave the stage. Backstage, Angela grabbed my arm, eyes shining. That was incredible. Exactly what everyone needed to hear. I mostly just told them to read their contracts, I said, feeling suddenly exhausted. You told them they have power, Angela corrected. In a system designed to make them feel powerless. That's everything. The speech was recorded and posted online. Within a week it had 500,000 views. Within a month over 2 million. Clips circulated on social media with captions like, "This is what standing your ground looks like," and "Every worker needs to hear this." I received hundreds of messages. Some from women who'd been inspired to review their own contracts and found similar protection clauses. Others from workers who'd been intimidated into accepting bad deals and were now pushing back. A few from lawyers offering to help enforce forgotten agreements. The most meaningful message came from someone I didn't expect. Chase Donovan. "Faith, I watched your conference speech. Watched it 3 times actually. I wanted you to know. Vanguard is different now. Not perfect but different. We have mandatory contract reviews before any compensation changes. We have employee advocates in every restructuring discussion. The board implemented protections that mean what happened to you can't happen to anyone else. It's not enough. It doesn't undo the damage. But it's something. I also wanted you to know I'm leaving Vanguard at the end of the quarter. Going to a nonprofit that helps workers understand their employment rights. Turns out enforcing contracts from the corporate side wasn't satisfying anymore. Maybe I can do more good helping people like you protect themselves before things get to crisis point. Thank you for teaching me that lesson, even though you probably didn't intend to." I read the email twice, then saved it in my evidence of impact folder alongside all the others. Change was slow. Change was imperfect. But change was happening, rippling outward from one enforced contract like waves from a stone dropped in still water. By spring my life had settled into a new rhythm. Consulting work 3 days a week. Teaching twice a month. Writing articles about systems architecture and worker advocacy. Living comfortably but not extravagantly in the same apartment where this whole thing had started. The money sat in carefully managed accounts, generating income one could live on indefinitely. I donated a substantial amount to organizations supporting workers' rights, tech education for underserved communities, and legal defense funds for employees fighting contract violations. The rest I invested in something Leonard Ashford had mentioned casually during a phone call. You should start a company. Build the kind of workplace you wish had existed. So I did. Douglas Collaborative launched in June 2026, a consulting firm specializing in infrastructure architecture and systems design. But with a twist. We were a worker-owned cooperative. Every employee had equity. Every decision was democratic. Contracts were transparent, compensation was fair. And nobody could get pension frozen because we built protections into our foundational documents from day one. We were small, just 8 people in our first year. But we did good work, treated each other with respect, and proved that you could build a successful company without treating humans as optimizable resources. On our 1-year anniversary, I gathered the team in our modest office space, not a garage but close enough to feel symbolic, and raised a cup of coffee and toast. To foundations, I said. And to building them strong enough to support everyone. The team echoed the toast, and for the first time in decades, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I never went back to Vanguard Solutions. Never walked through those doors again. Never attended the occasional founder reunions they started hosting after my enforcement action reminded them they had a history. But I heard things. The company stabilized. Stock recovered. They launched new products, won new contracts, continued existing. The executives who'd tried to freeze my pension mostly moved on to other companies, bringing their optimization strategies with them. The developers I'd trained, though, the ones who'd sent me that anonymous email, they stayed. They built things. They kept the foundation strong. And whenever new management tried to cut corners on people, someone would quietly mention Faith Douglas and the $35 million lesson the board had learned about honoring contracts. My name became shorthand for consequences, for standing ground, for the idea that foundations couldn't be erased just because they were inconvenient. I could live with that legacy. 3 years after the wire transfer that changed everything, I received one final piece of correspondence from Vanguard Solutions. A formal letter printed on company letterhead, signed by the current CEO, someone I'd never met. Dear Faith Douglas, on behalf of Vanguard Solutions, I write to formally recognize your contributions to our company's founding and development. Your systems architecture, crisis management, and technical leadership formed the foundation upon which this company was built. We erred in treating that foundation as disposable. The lesson cost us significantly both financially and in reputation. But it taught us something more valuable, that the people who build things matter. That contracts are sacred. That quiet competence deserves recognition, not erasure. We have implemented the Faith Douglas Founding Member Protection Policy, ensuring no employee with over 20 years of service can have their compensation unilaterally modified without board approval and personal consultation. This policy is named for you not as apology, words cannot undo what occurred, but as commitment that we will honor those who build foundations for others to stand upon. With respect and recognition, Jonathan Vail, Chief Executive Officer, Vanguard Solutions. I read the letter once, then filed it away in a drawer I rarely opened. Some things can't be fixed with policies named after the people you wronged. But at least they were trying. At least something had changed. Me. I was building my own foundation now, brick by brick, with people who understood from day one that workers were humans, not resources. That contracts meant something. That invisible labor deserved visible respect. The $35 million hadn't bought me happiness. But it had bought me choices, agency, and the freedom to build something better than what I'd left behind. Some foundations are built to last forever. Others are built to teach lessons about what happens when you forget they exist. Mine had done both. The book. 5 years after that frozen Friday afternoon when my pension vanished into corporate optimization, I sat in a coffee shop in Detroit's downtown district, meeting with a young developer named Melissa Park who'd reached out asking for advice. I've been at my company 7 years, she said, stirring her latte nervously. They just announced a temporary benefits reduction. I have this clause in my contract from when I started, but I don't know if it's enforceable or if I should just accept the cut and move on. I smiled, the same small smile I'd had that morning 5 years ago when I'd found my accordion folder. Can I see the contract? She pulled it up on her tablet, navigated to the relevant section. I read it carefully, professionally, with the eye of someone who'd learned exactly what words meant when lawyers drafted them. This is enforceable, I said. And if you want to enforce it, here's what you do. As I walked her through the process, documentation, legal counsel, written notification, timeline expectations, I saw her posture change. Saw the shift from powerless acceptance to informed agency. This, I realized, was my real legacy. Not the $35 million. Not the headlines or the conference speeches or the company I'd founded. It was this. Teaching people that they weren't powerless. That contracts existed to protect them. That quiet competence combined with documented rights could move mountains, one enforced clause at a time. When Melissa left that coffee shop, she had a plan and the confidence to execute it. She had her power back. And I had the satisfaction of knowing that somewhere in America, another foundation was learning that you can't erase the people who hold everything up. Not without consequences. Not anymore.